I was like a deer caught in the headlights. I'm thinking, that can't be because I feel like $1,000,000.
And how did you find Carnivore?
Well, I guess you'd say it found me. I know that's kind of become a popular thing, but I had been on a journey, you could say, with respect to food, and I'd been struggling most all my adult life with not with any kind of particular illness or disease, and I really wasn't even overweight, but I really struggled with food addiction. And I never talked about it. I don't even think I really acknowledged it to myself, but I was thinking about food all the time and restricting my calories and trying to keep my appetite in control. So in 2017, the end of 2017, keto was kind of at its peak as far as social media goes and different things. And so I'd been hearing the word keto for a long time, but I did not know what it meant. I'd never heard of keto. I'd never heard of a ketogenic diet. So I started asking, and honestly, most of the people that were on it could not explain to me what it was, and it really had me puzzled. I thought, you're doing this, but you don't even know what it is you're doing. And so, but it was working for them, and they were losing weight, and most of them were doing it, for weight loss. So as it turned out, as I was kind of becoming more and more curious, my husband, who is a pastor, full-time pastor, but he's also an adjunct professor, came home and told me this adorable story. And so I'd like to share that with you because this is what kind of tipped me over to really dig down deep and try to find out for myself. But he said he was at the gym and he had someone come up to him, a young girl, and she had a baby. And she walked up to him and said, "Hi, Dr. Watkins, how are you?" And he could not place her. He could not figure out who it was, but he figured, it must be one of my college students. I'll just let her keep talking and then eventually I'll figure it out. So as it turned out, she had lost so much weight. She had gone keto, and she told this to my husband, and she had lost like over 100 pounds, and he didn't recognize her. And her story was that she did it not only for weight loss, but also because she had recently gotten married and they were infertile and they couldn't conceive. So she lost the weight, she got pregnant, and there was the little bundle of joy, on her hip when she was talking to my husband. So, as he likes to do, he came home and relayed that story to me. And I thought, okay, I have got to find out what this is. So I went online and I kind of stumbled into YouTube and just came across a gazillion YouTubers. One in particular that really hooked me was from Switzerland. And I don't know why she did. I just guess I felt like I liked the way she communicated what she was doing. And she'd go to the grocery store and shop and show you what she was buying. But the other person that really got me was a fellow by the name of Butter Bob. And so he was just really, really good. And he was down to earth. Unfortunately, he's no longer doing any new YouTubes. A lot of his older stuff is still on. But one particular video was called Butter Makes Your Pants Fall Off. And it is a cult classic. I encourage anybody who's listening to this to go online and find that because it's still up. And he just explained how much weight he had, all his before and after pictures. And for him, it was weight loss and health. And he explained why fat was good and what kind of fats were good, and that we shouldn't be afraid of fat. And, eggs were good, butter is good, dairy is good, all of the things that I'd been told were not good. And so slowly but surely, I figured out what keto was, and I thought, you know what, I want to try this. What have I got to lose? Because they were all talking about not being hungry because they were eating foods high in fat, and then they were satiated and they didn't, they weren't hungry. Whereas I'm over here counting, restricting my portion sizes. I never really counted calories, but I only ate 2 meals a day, and I really portion controlled. And oftentimes I went to bed hungry because that was my choice. And so from there, I went full blown keto for about 3 years. So this started at the end of 2017. And then more and more in my feeds started dropping videos about carnivore. And so, some of the early people that are not even around now, frankly, I started listening. The first time I thought, I cannot believe I'm going to take the time to listen to somebody talk about being a carnivore. This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of. But I thought, what if I got to lose? I didn't think I'd be eating bacon and eggs and beef and, dairy the way I am. So I watched a few of those and I was really taken aback because they were real clear in their presentation. It was understandable, it made sense, it fit with keto. So I kind of went more and more in that direction. So I consider myself a ketovore, and that's kind of a person who is between a keto and a carnivore. And it might be helpful. I've shared this with other people, so I'll kind of go through and just share the spectrum of a low carb, high healthy fat diet. Dr. Ken Berry, he likes to call it a spectrum, and I think that's really good. So on the far liberal side, so you have more carbs on one side, and then you have no carbs on the other side. But when you first start, you might start out with a low carb, high healthy fat. And I say healthy fat because we're not talking about vegetable oils. We're talking about animal fat. Okay. So, or fruit oils, which would be, so your animal fats would be lard or tallow or butter. And then your fruit oils would be avocado, coconut, or olive oil. Those are okay. But the animal fats are really the best because they're more bioavailable. So in that framework, you're talking between 50 to 75 grams of carbs max. Okay, so that's low carb, high fat. And then next over would be keto. And keto is considered on a daily basis 20 grams of carbohydrates or less, but as many as 20, 25 grams. And that's mostly meat and vegetables, or meat, vegetables, and dairy. But you're really honest with your grams carbohydrates and counting them. So then coming over a little bit more strict would be your ketovore. And your ketovore is about 10 grams of carbohydrates or less. And that includes everything that you can get that you could eat on a keto diet. You just have to have fewer carbs. And so after a ketovore would come carnivore. And carnivore is all your fatty meats, including wild game and fish and poultry and pork, excuse me, but it's all fatty. And it also includes dairy, animal dairy. So carnivore is not technically zero carbs because dairy does have some carbohydrates. So a little bit further over on the spectrum is what you would call zero carb, and that is carnivore with no dairy. Okay, so it's all your fatty meats, your fatty poultry, fatty fish, butter. No butter. Sorry, maybe a little butter to cook in, but not much, if any. And also with going back to carnivore, you can use spices when you cook your meat. So zero carb, you really don't even use spices. And then the last one, the most extreme, if you want to use the word extreme, but I don't really think it is extreme because many people really flourish on this. And I would say that people like Michaela Peterson have, well, she coined the phrase and she's helped make it popular, but it's the lion diet. And the lion diet is only ruminant animals. So those are animals that have multi-chamber stomachs. They have rumens. And so that would be, your beef, your lamb, and your game, your wild game, and then water. So that's kind of the spectrum that we need to be familiar with in order to understand, our community.
Yeah, so for you now, like eating this way, 2017, for 3 years on keto, and then as you moved towards a more carnivore or ketovore way, that's been about 4 years.
Yes, that's right. Yes, uh-huh.
And what kind of changes have you seen in that time?
Well, I tell you, I was shocked. I was just shocked because the changes happened really fast. And at my age, so I was coming up on 60 when I first started. I started at the very end of 2017, so it's a little confusing as to, how long I've actually been on it. But so I'd lived most of my whole adult life on the standard American diet, but I was portion controlling and I was exercising and all. And I would have been considered, to look at me, I was more slim. I would have considered to be, pretty healthy. And the only real problem I had was what so many people have today, which is hypothyroidism. I think it's just, an autoimmune illness that is a contemporary illness based on several decades now of standard American diet. I'm convinced of that. So I was taking low dose Synthroid for that. But what I noticed is immediately my mood started stabilizing, and I didn't have the high highs and the low lows that I had to kind of rein in. It used to take quite a bit of energy to kind of keep those emotions in balance. And I noticed that that was just kind of getting easier. And I really wasn't, I had more mental clarity. I had more room, mental room to kind of think things through and not confuse my thoughts and my emotions, which some of us are more prone to do, I think. Um, I noticed my skin started changing. I was already getting those crusty aging spots on my face. They went away. Tartar on my teeth, bleeding gums, it all reduced. But I think the biggest thing is, and this is kind of weird because I've never sat around, I've never been, short of projects to do, but my energy level went through the roof. And I couldn't believe if you feel good, I think, for one thing, but then your energy level goes up, you just can't believe it. And especially as you get older, that's one of those things that's supposed to get, supposed to decline and get worse. And here I am, as a matter of fact, this last year, I went and got certified in two different areas of fitness. And I'm now a group fitness instructor in both BARRE, and yoga. Now, those are things I've done for quite a while and enjoyed, especially yoga for decades. But I thought, I'm going to get certified and I'm going to start teaching. So at the age of 65, I got certified. And January of this last year, I started teaching in two different places, two different locations. And I have a total of 8 classes each week that I not only teach, but I have to prep for. And I have to learn the routine. And then when you teach, you have to demonstrate and talk at the same time and schmooze, and do and be up and be peppy and and I'm doing it without really little effort. So now, and there are other things, small things for me that I notice that I don't really have anything written down, but just across the board. And the main thing is, I thought if I cut out all those fruits and vegetables, because I'd been told, as we all had, that you have to eat them. But once I learned that there are no essential fruit and there are not no aren't any essential vegetables, there are no essential carbohydrates, um, that my body didn't just like collapse. And I was shocked by that because I really had been brainwashed into thinking that, in order to be healthy, you had to eat that every single day. And so that was a real shocker. I mean, I was just really surprised that I could be so healthy and not ever eat, to speak of, a whole lot of that ever again.
That's awesome, especially about the energy and being able to work like that now. That's great.
Do you see the muscle?
Oh, nice.
And that's from the diet, really. It's real. I mean, I'm 66 and I have more muscle definition than I've ever had. And another thing is I've dropped pounds that I really didn't anticipate. I started at, so I'm almost 5'10", and I'll just tell the whole world I was at 137 pounds for much of my adult life, and now I've lost about 14 pounds, and that's over a long period. These 5 or 6 years, 6 years, and it just came off all by itself, and my clothes fit great. I'm no longer bloated. I used to be so bloated, and every night before I went to bed, I thought I'd stand and look at the mirror, and I thought I was 3 months pregnant. I'm not bloated anymore because I'm not eating all that fiber, and I don't eat that much dairy. Sometimes dairy can bloat. So yeah, it's been great.
That's awesome. And you kind of found this indirectly through your husband.
Yes.
How has he been with this? Has he adopted this way of eating as well?
He finally has, and I'm so happy for him because last time we talked, I shared that with your followers and with you about his diagnosis with dystonia, which is in the Parkinson's disease. And I've always wanted him to go full bore in this direction so that we could see, once he eliminated all the bad things, if that might not help him with his dystonia. So he hasn't really seen a lot of improvement in his dystonia because it is neuromuscular, but he's lost weight and he is like, every time he gets a chance to talk to somebody about the keto diet, you cannot shut him up. Because especially at our age, everybody around us is complaining about this and how many medications they're on and joint replacements and, worse, like open heart surgery and, cancer and all kinds of stuff. And so, it's not that he wants to be offensive, but we both, just find ourselves really wanting to share this way of life so that those around us are not suffering so much. And unfortunately, that's a lot um, easier said than done. And people like my husband and I for so long believed a lot of lies about diet and nutrition. And we also believed that if you got sick, it was really nothing that you did or didn't do. It was probably genetic and on and on.
You've had such good results. Um, what has your doctor said?
Well, this is something that I'm excited to share with your followers and with you, Dave. Out of ignorance, I kept my GP because I didn't know any different really, and I knew I needed blood work. So I used my GP to get blood work after about a year. And I did tell the nurse practitioner or the physician's assistant, which is who I go to, that I was on keto, and she just kind of listened, that's fine. So, but I asked her to allow me to get a full blood workup, and she did. She ordered it, and we took the bloods. And so that would have been in probably 2019. So I was well into this for a year, and I was so interested in getting the results and so eager because I knew I'd been faithful, and I knew that I felt like $1 million, and I knew that that my blood work was going to really be good. And I really didn't understand that much about how to interpret blood work. But anyway, so I did the blood work, and then I went in to see the physician's assistant. I sat down, and she came in the room, and she sat down at her desk, and she opened up my folder, and she turned to me, and she said, "Your blood work is awful." And I was just like, I didn't want to, I was like a deer caught in the headlights. I'm thinking that can't be because I feel like $1 million. And so then thereafter, she told me what she was referring to, and she was talking about my cholesterol because my cholesterol in 2019 was higher than the standard that they were advocating. Okay, so that was one of the things that I was hoping we could talk about today because I think other people, we could spare them that same experience that I had in the doctor's office when she turned to me and said, "Your blood work is awful." So my LDL in 2019 was 436. No, it was 326. So my LDL was 326. Well, they don't want your LDL to be over 100. My total cholesterol was 436. Okay. And they don't want your total cholesterol to be over 200. So that's what she was referring to. And then she went on. Of course, after she said my blood work was awful, I really didn't hear a whole lot else of what she said, except at the very end, she said something about statins. And I said, no, I had already heard that we don't need to be on statins. And I already kind of knew that there was a possibility that after eating an all animal based or a mostly animal based diet, that my saturated fat could go up or my cholesterol rather could go up in my blood work. So I went home and I was kind of reeling about her comment. And I couldn't get that comment out of my head. I wished I'd had the wherewithal to ask her in that from that lipid panel. Oh, okay. So my total cholesterol is 436. What are my triglycerides? And what is my HDL? And let's see, what is my hemoglobin A1C? And what is my fasting insulin? All those things that I know now, but I didn't know then. So then I decided I'm going to go home and figure this out. So I did, and I did a deep dive into HDL, which is high density lipoproteins, and LDL, which is low density lipoproteins, and triglycerides, and the ratios. And, and I was able to take a deep breath and kind of, understand it. Well, I decided after I had that terrible experience and she didn't seem to be interested in learning anything about what I was doing with my diet, I thought, okay, I've got to find a doctor that can interpret my next year's blood work. So I went on, I followed different people, online, and I found a telehealth doctor online. His name is Dr. Sivas. And so he saw me for about 2 years. And so that was nice. It was not as, it was great for him to be able to help me with my blood work and say, you're doing great. Don't worry about your total cholesterol. But not being able to go in and have somebody to talk to wasn't ideal. So for the next couple of years, though, my cholesterol continued to go up. And so, shortly thereafter, in 2023, I go in and my LDL now is up to 567 and my total cholesterol is 691. And so I'm feeling great, wonderful, excellent, superb. And so this last year in March, I went in and my blood work. Now I have somebody local now that I have found who's closer, and he also practices a ketogenic metabolism personally, so he understands. So he tested my blood, and my LDL had gone up to 610 and my total cholesterol was 742. And but it was the most stark contrast when he told me that. He turned to me and he said, "I'm jealous." Because he's not afraid of high cholesterol, because he knows what to look for. Well, what a contrast between the first experience where she sits down and says, your blood work is horrible. So, but now let me put some brackets around these numbers because I am what is called a lean mass hyperresponder. And it's important that as our community grows and more people are coming in, that they understand that your biomarkers for cardiovascular health, for heart attack or for stroke, is not total cholesterol. And it's not your LDL. It's your ratios between your triglycerides and your HDL. And you want your ratio to be 1.5 or less. My ratio, even though I have astronomical high cholesterol, is always less than 1.5. Sometimes it's less than 1. One time it was 0.078, so it wasn't even 1. So and this does fluctuate. My total cholesterol fluctuates, my LDL fluctuates, and my HDL fluctuates, and it depends on what you do many times before you go in to get your blood work done. If you've done a lot of exercising, that can alter it. If you've been stressed out, if you haven't been sleeping well, that can also change your numbers from what I understand. So the main thing that we all need to be aware is there are 4 major areas that are like the things that you want to be screened for. And I think everybody should consider getting their blood work done regularly. And if you don't have a doctor that you trust, you can do this on your own. You can go online and you can order your own labs. I made a list here. You can go to Own Your Labs, you can go to Direct Labs, you can go to Jason Health, you can go to Life Extension, Let's Get Checked. And there are probably more people probably in the chat room can share where they get their labs. You just go online, you choose which ones you want, you pay online, and then they email you a prescription and you download that or you print that out, you take it in and hand it to the person at the desk, whether it's Quest or LabCorp. I use LabCorp. And then they will fill your labs, and you don't even pay them because you've already paid online, and the company that you pay online pays your local lab place. So, I mean, I did that this last time just to see how easy it was or how hard it was, and it was easy peasy. So anyway, the markers that you want to be aware of is you don't, of course you always want to be fasted when you go in to get your blood work. And you always want to have your fasting glucose, which should be between 80 and no more than 100. Okay, should be 100 or less. Your fasting insulin, and your fasting insulin, from what I understand, is even more important than your fasting glucose because you could be pre-diabetic and have a low and happen to have low glucose that morning when you had your blood tested, but you can't fool your insulin. And so your insulin is going to be very consistent. And if your insulin is higher than it should be, I think, let's see, I have it written down here somewhere. Um, where did I put that? Your insulin should, I think it shouldn't be higher than 5, but I can double check that. And then, so this fasting glucose, fasting insulin, and then your hemoglobin A1C, and that also should be 5 or less. Um, and your hemoglobin A1C is really important because your hemoglobin are your red blood cells, and your red blood cells actually live for up to 3 months. So what you're testing with your A1 your HA1C is the amount of sugar that's glycated onto your red blood cells over a period of time, and then that gives you an idea how much sugar is being taken in by your red blood cells. Loosely, that's a loose definition of what's happening there. So that's 5.0 or less. And then, so let's see, there's the glucose, the insulin, the the A1C, and then what was the fourth one? Oh, well, your lipid panel, yeah. And so that would include your triglycerides and your LDL. Okay. Now you don't really need to be freaked out about high total cholesterol, and you don't need to be freaked out about LDL if, and this is the if your triglycerides are less than 100, okay? They're less than 100, and your HDL is greater than 60. So if those numbers are anywhere in that range, that's the most important thing, along with your A1C. Now, there is a triglyceride HDL ratio that you want, and it's really easy to figure out. You want it to be at 1.5 or less, as I said earlier. So you take your triglyceride number and you divide it by your HDL, and you want that number to be 1.5 or less. Okay. So that's a much more accurate biomarker than either your LDL or your total cholesterol. So with someone like myself, I said I was a lean mass hyperresponder. So I think there's about a third of the population are going to be like me. And even with a ratio, a triglyceride HDL ratio of 1.5 or less, we're going to have high cholesterol. We're going to have a high LDL. May not be as high as 742. I don't know that I've ever heard of anybody having, frankly, total cholesterol in the 700s. So, but look at me, I'm flourishing, right? I've never had more brain clarity. I don't have no mental fog. I'm not in any threat of dementia. I'm learning new routines for 8 classes each week, and then I'm teaching them and, executing them and blah, blah, blah. So, so I just wanted to share um, that information for our community because I figure, well, if my total cholesterol is that high, I'm probably not alone.
As you say, you're feeling good, right? You've got better brain clarity than ever.
Oh,
It's
it's amazing the difference. And then just to not, when you're lighter, I think now I've decided that being lighter, even on the lean side, if you can, is really healthier. I mean, I know we're supposed to carry a certain amount of fat, and I know that there's a reason why we have fat on our bodies. But generally speaking, I think we've become so accustomed to having much more weight than we really should be carrying. So I'm enjoying being 14 pounds lighter. When I do a plank in yoga or in bar, I don't I have no problem in my wrists I have no inflammation in any of my joints. When I do a tripod or when I do a headstand or, the splits or anything like that, I feel like a teenager. And it is just incredible. I mean, I don't know where this is gonna end up, Dave, because I'm gonna still get older, but, what are the possibilities, when you think about it? And so, it's a bright horizon ahead. Those of us who have decided to get on this journey and really educate ourselves and use ourselves as an anecdote and kind of as an n equals one experiment. What have you got to lose? Anybody who's listening to me and they're thinking they're maybe too old, no, you're not. You're not too old. You're never too old. You've got nothing to lose ever, and you just need to educate yourself. That's the main thing. And education is power. Information is power. And don't give your power away to a professional, to a doctor, especially. And this is not original, but I've heard Dr. Ken Berry say this, and I just love him. He said, if you go, words to this effect, if you go to a doctor and he, has got Dunlap disease where his belly is Dunlapped over his belt, and, he's not as trim and fit, but he's going to tell you how to get trim and fit, get up and walk out because he doesn't know. So, and the doctor that I now have, who is, he's like a ketovore like me, he's in great shape. So he has authority when he talks to his patients about diet and nutrition. And yes, his name is Dr. Triana, and he's in Mayfield, Kentucky, and I just love him.
Isn't it great to be doing something like this where you feel like you're aging backwards?
It's the most unbelievable thing I have ever experienced. I mean, honestly, life is hard. And the older you get, the more hardship you experience and you see all around you. There's just a lot of suffering. There's a lot of hardship. We live in a fallen world, and from my perspective and my worldview, it's kind of meant to be that way. We're supposed to have to suffer in this life, and as a Christian, I don't despair. I don't despair, and I have, I have a personal relationship with God through Jesus, and I take all of it to Him. But I never would have guessed or thought it possible to be at this point in my life where I feel like a teenager again. And other than teaching fitness classes, I also play a lot of competitive tennis. And most women and men my age they no longer play singles. They only play doubles, because you don't have to run around. I am not playing doubles. I don't want to give up half the court to anybody. And so, I work really hard to find people that will still go out on the court and play singles because it gets tougher the older you get. But yeah, so I feel like the future is bright, and I'm looking forward to the future. I mean, I hope to be teaching fitness classes till I'm into my 90s. Wouldn't that be exciting?
Yeah. So one thing we haven't talked about is your eating. So day to day, what is your eating like?
Well, it's kind of changed recently. I was 2 meals a day, 3 meals a day, and when we did our first interview, I talked about that. What I'm eating has stayed the same, so it's mostly heavy animal based with a side, like a garnish of pickled okra or dill pickle, or maybe a very simple salad, mostly with low glycemic vegetables like cucumber and iceberg lettuce. And then I use garlic salt to season my what I call a summer salad. But mostly it's ground beef. It's steak when it's on sale, pork. I love to cook a big pork roast. It's eggs. It's pork belly. I can source pork belly here. So, for example, but what has changed? That's what I was going to say. What has changed is my body has kind of gone to one meal a day. And it just kind of evolved. It went, to 2 meals, and then I got so busy. I think it's probably because of my schedule. I didn't really have time to eat. that much. And so I just kind of fell into this one meal a day routine. And that's really what I've been doing for the last few, probably 3 months. And so, like today, my one meal, I ate it after I got home from church, and it was I ate around 2 o'clock, 2:30. I won't eat again until tomorrow around the same time. And it was a discounted on sale steak, emphasis on sale. And I had that with some pork belly, pieces of pork belly. And my pork belly was salted. So I didn't use any garlic salt on my steak. And I just ate the pork belly with my steak. And it was just perfect. And I really couldn't even finish it. So I've seen my appetite kind of go down a little bit as well. When I eat, I'm not eating as much. So I don't know entirely what to attribute that to, other than perhaps, my more rigorous schedule. Um, oh, I know one thing I wanted to really share that I didn't share last time, and that is I twisted my husband's arm and asked him if we could buy a second freezer because we had a nice freezer and a refrigerator. And his attitude was, "What, we have one freezer. Why do we need two?" So I wanted to get an upright freezer so that when I am out and about, that when there's a grocery store that I go to on a regular basis and they have a sale on meat, I can buy it. And we have several chain grocery stores in the area. And in our area of Western Kentucky, they discount their meat all the time. And of course, discounted meat is meat that's approaching its best buy date or due date. So, you do want to be mindful of that. I'm not overly worried about it, but you do want to be mindful. So, I have a cooler in my car. I have an SUV, so I have plenty of space. The food goes from the clearance section. I never buy meat that's not discounted. And many times I'm buying steaks at half price. It goes from the grocery store into my cooler in my car. And then when I get home, it goes into my upright freezer. And so that way I can afford to eat a lot of the things that I want to eat. Like, for example, I really like oxtail, and I like to cook my oxtail so that I can make a bone broth meat soup. And I use my Instant Pot. Well, oxtail is expensive. And for those of you who don't know what oxtail is, it says it's called ox, but it's really a cow, and it's the tail of the cow, and they slice it cross section wise. And so then those discs of the tail are called oxtail, and they're expensive. But they have a lot of collagen. They have a lot of bone marrow, and the meat is super flavorful because it's right on the bone, and the more tastier meat is right next to the bone. But when it goes on sale, there might be 3 or 4 packages. Well, I'll just take all. Don't tell anybody, and I'll put them in my cart, put them in my cooler, and take them home. And then when we run out of bone broth, which my husband and I are eating quite a bit of, I just keep a container of it in the refrigerator. So if we want a snack, we have something healthy to pull out and put it in a mug and heat it up and eat that. So mostly eggs and bacon or eggs and pork belly. And then anytime I pair my meat, it's going to be a low glycemic vegetable. And that includes green olives. It includes a low glycemic salad. It includes pickled okra and dill pickles. I just kind of rotate those vegetables around. And then sometimes I don't eat any vegetables. If I'm going to eat pork belly and eggs, I'm not going to put a slice of a half of an avocado, which is another, of course, that's a fruit, but that's something else I might kind of use on the side. And it's simple, it's easy. I cook all my meat mostly in my air fryer now, or I put it in my cast iron skillet and I put it under the broiler in the oven. And slam bam, thank you, ma'am. It's easy.
Nice. So let's imagine we'd met 20 years ago. If I'd said to you 20 years ago, when you're 65, you're going to be eating mainly animal products. You're going to be eating once a day, and you're going to be running around teaching classes. Would you have believed me?
I honestly, that would have been like somebody speaking a foreign language because, first of all, about the only thing I ate were salads, trying to keep my weight down. So I ate a lot of salads and lean bacon. I would never have touched any bacon. It had to be turkey bacon. Eggs, well, eggs were a no-no, so I wouldn't have been eating eggs. So no, I would not have, certainly for the diet, I would not, you would have been speaking a foreign language.
Yeah. So, how would you recommend a friend get started with this if they're interested?
Yes, I do try to encourage a lot of my friends and people who ask me questions to really think about their health. And I always tell them that nothing ever tastes as good as healthy feels. And that's not original, but I just really glommed onto that when I heard it because, you don't eat the things that you at first especially, it's hard to kinda give up some of those processed carbohydrates, so I really stress how good they're gonna feel and how much inflammation they're gonna lose, and I encourage them to take before pictures, and I not only of their body, I say, "Nobody has to look at your pictures, but go ahead and take them in something where you can really see what your body looks like, and take a facial picture, take a picture of your face because I promise you when the inflammation goes down and you start losing weight, which most people it's a weight concern, their face is going to change because the inflammation is going to leave their face and their nose is going to get more narrow and their face is going to not look as puffy. So I encourage those kinds of things. I encourage them to get into a support group and I explain that what I mean by that is go online, go to YouTube, find people that you like and start following them. Type in keto diet for a day or what I ate on the keto diet or um, uh, uh, you know, how many carbohydrates to eat for a keto diet. And even now, I recommend certain people, like I'll say, look for Dr. Ken Berry, look for Dave Mack, Zero Carb Now, or look for Dr. Sean Baker, look for Dr. Anthony Shafee, look for different people that I know they're going to get hooked, and because we need a support group, and we're going to go, they're going to go against the stream, and then the other thing I say is don't tell anybody if you decide to do this. Just don't tell anybody. Keep it to yourself. And it'll make it so much easier because nobody needs to know. And more than likely, if you talk about it, they're not going to understand. And they're going to, probably try to persuade you that if you keep eating this way, you're going to have a heart attack or you're going to have a stroke or you're going to get colon cancer or something, ridiculous. Um, and then what I do is I just try to follow up with them. I try to ask them how they're doing. I don't want to be obnoxious. And if they haven't gone online and gotten into any of the YouTubes that I've recommended, then I can kind of sense, okay, there may not be a lot of interest. But if they have and they have more questions, then I always avail myself and make myself available to answer any questions that they have. As a matter of fact, there's a gal right now that has she's exceedingly overweight. We'll just leave it at that. And I have been talking to her a lot about the keto diet. I haven't tried to be rude or anything, and so she's recently started and she's going in this direction and she's using intermittent fasting because that's easier for her because she's a nurse and so she has long hours and so while she's working she's not eating and then when she does eat she eats a more of a low carb high healthy fat and she had a meat aversion that she had to get over. She had an allergy to the protein and eggs that she's had to get over, and I've helped her with that by encouraging her to just do it incrementally, and recognize you could eat the yolks. You probably don't. You're not reacting to the yolks. You're reacting to the protein in the egg. So start with the yolks and then add a little bit of the egg white incrementally and also with the meat I've been trying to persuade her chicken is good but it's not as good as beef and ruminant animals so eat just a little bit at a time and she's doing it and she's lost over 50 pounds and this is a really big deal because this is not anything she's ever really wanted to face or tackle. It's just seemed so insurmountable. And really, it's taken about a year for her to get to the point where she wanted to kind of take the plunge. And so I'm really thankful that I've been able to, kind of go on that journey with her and encourage her. And So, she didn't take the pictures like I asked her to, but now she's got some she's going back and looking for, and she's wishing she had taken the pictures, but of course she's still got time to take pictures. So if anyone's listening and they're gonna try this, I really encourage you to get those pictures taken. Like I said, take them in something that you don't want anybody else to see you in, but that you can see. Because recently she sent me a picture of herself at a wedding that somebody else had taken at her highest weight. And then she sent me a picture of what she looks like now. And she was so elated. She said, "Oh, Anne, I didn't realize how different I look and how, and on and on and on." And I was just so happy for her because it was, a real big contrast between where she is now and where she was when she started.
Nice. So, and how can people reach out to you? Do you have social media?
I do. My name is Keto Gal Ann, and I'm on YouTube. I'm on TikTok, and I'm on Facebook. And there's one more. I haven't done anything in a long time. So Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok. And it's Keto Gal Ann, and I have shorts and reels, and I have a couple of longs, I guess you would say, regular videos. So, yeah, I think that, what I try to do is to just try to be useful with the information, practical, and hopefully it's helpful to those who go on and watch.
Nice. Well, I'll link to those in the description below. And thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. I really appreciate your time.
You're so welcome, Dave. And thanks for all that you're doing. We really love watching you and we love all your guests and keep it up.